I'm here tonight talking about self-sabotage, which I personally think is a little weird that we do this to ourselves. You know, we say we want something, and we really do want it, and yet we do those things to stop ourselves from getting what we want. I want to have more money in my life, but I go on a spending spree when I can't afford it, and I put myself in debt. I want to be healthier, and I eat the bag of chips and the chocolate bar and the soft drink, or I make myself feel better by having a Diet Coke. Or I want to be say I want to be happier and feel good about myself, but I brush off a compliment like it means nothing. So self-sabotage can sometimes be really obvious, and sometimes it's a little less so. And sometimes other people can see it in us way easier than we can see it in ourselves, which is certainly part of my story. When my twins were about 2 years old, my daughter wasn't sleeping through the night. She was having some separation anxiety, actually, and she wanted to come in bed with me at 2 o'clock in the morning, set the alarm by her every night. And I was going to be a mom that didn't have a child in the bed with her. So I went 6 months, not kidding, 6 months with no sleep all the way through the night until I finally broke down and I thought, I can't do this anymore. And I went to my family doctor. And the family doctor said to me, Andrea, is it having her in the bed with you that's the problem, or is it the principle of having her in the bed with you that's the problem? And I went, huh. It was the first time that my BS got called into question, and my BS being my belief system. And we all have our own belief systems. It's the stories we tell ourselves in our heads. It's the way we see the world and the way we should act within it. And it's the rules that we set up for ourselves. And quite clearly, I had set up a rule for myself that wasn't working. So I had to decide, was I going to keep playing by the rule, or was I going to make a change? Well, I don't know about you, but I needed sleep. So I was going to make a change for sure. And I'd like to say that at that point in time, I recognized that I needed to put myself first more often, but I didn't. And so fast forward another 2.5 years, and this is when I hit the lowest point in my life. I was in a marriage that was crumbling. I was in a job that I hated, and I wouldn't leave because it was at least a little bit safe. And I was still an exhausted mother because I wasn't putting myself first. I wasn't doing my photography anymore. I wasn't writing anymore. I wasn't even going for a walk by the river anymore, all by myself, just to have some time. I was putting everybody else first. Self-sabotage with the best intentions. Right? So self-sabotage really happens because of our subconscious minds, and our subconscious is so powerful. I like to describe it as a big supercomputer that kind of runs in the background all the time. And what it does is it helps you bring the things that you want in your life. Right now, your subconscious is keeping you breathing, and it's keeping your heart beating, and it's allowing you to focus on my every word with bated breath, right? It's also allowing you to filter out things, okay? So different lights, people moving, and different sounds that are going on, it's allowing you to focus. So your subconscious brings you the things that you want. Your subconscious is also listening to you all the time. So what you say to yourself is really important because your subconscious takes it and it starts to create rules that you live by. It starts to create your beliefs and also your counter beliefs. So think about this. If you were a kid and you stood up in class and you shared something and your friends laughed at you or your teacher ridiculed you, you would feel really hurt. And so sometimes what happens is your subconscious goes, I didn't really like that. I didn't feel good about that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a rule that you're not going to share anything with anybody anymore. You're not going to say what you want in life just in case somebody ridicules you. So now you're walking down a path where you're not telling people what you want, and you're kind of stuck. You're not happy anymore. And that's because your subconscious is setting up that rule for you, but it's doing it for a positive reason. And that positive reason is to keep you safe, right inside your little comfort zone, where it knows everything that's going to happen. And it's very predictable. Our brain loves patterns, and so this is what's happening. So when you try to step outside that comfort zone, that's when your subconscious kicks in and the voices start, right? And those voices are trying to keep you right where you are, where it's nice and safe. Now, your subconscious, being really powerful, can do lots of things at the same time. So it's very capable of listening to what you say you want, but also playing by the rules that you set up when you were 2 or 12 or 22. So it's a very powerful thing, and unless you take the rules out and look at them, you never know if you're sabotaging yourself, which is exactly where I was. I wanted more money in my life. How about you? More money? Anyone? Yeah, right? Okay, who doesn't want to have more money in their life? And I was really focused on it. I was doing everything I possibly could. I was getting my business off the ground. I was trying to get things going. And things were still falling through. I was getting opportunities. My subconscious was listening. It was bringing me opportunities, and I was acting on them. But things would often fall through, and it wouldn't work out the way I wanted to. And I couldn't figure out what was going on. I was doing everything I could. I was doing affirmations, law of attraction. Anybody, law of attraction? Okay. If it is not working for you, it is because you have a counter belief in play that's stopping you from getting the things that you want to have in your life. And it's not going to happen until you break through that belief. So at this point in time, I was over $100,000 in debt. And that's not including my car loans and my mortgage payment. I had a lot of debt going on. I had enough money in my bank account to pay the mortgage for the next month. And I knew I didn't have enough coming in for any further than that. So my back was against the wall. I had to figure this out. I needed to know what was going on. And so I was saying that I needed to solve this, and my subconscious was listening. And so it brought me an opportunity. And so your subconscious does this. It's kind of like when you go buy a car, and you decide that you have a brand in mind, and then you go driving, and then you see that brand everywhere. It's not because there's any more. It's simply because your subconscious filters and brings you the things that you say that you want. So my subconscious allowed me to see a video. So I clicked on the video, and it was on counter beliefs and self-sabotage. So me being me, I was like, oh, I need to research this, because I love figuring out why people do what they do and how the brain works and why we do these things. And I also knew if I could solve this for me, I could help other people with it too. So that's what I did all the research and tried to figure out what was going on, and I still kind of had no idea. So I had to let it go. And then when I let it go, my subconscious went to work on it, and it hit me right between the eyes. So first of all, I did the research on it, and I did the things like, oh, you know, money is the root of all evil. Rich people, they're selfish, or any other word that you might want to stick in there. And I didn't believe those things because I knew that people did great things with money, right? And there's also another one, somebody might resent me having money, but I knew everybody in my family would be happy. My mom would be happy, my sister would be proud. My husband, his whole goal is to be a kept man. So he was really happy about it, so it wasn't that. So I let it go, like I said, and it hit me right between the eyes, and I realized I was afraid that somebody would take my money. And that somebody was my ex-husband. Because all through our marriage, and certainly through the separation and divorce, money was always an issue. So it became a place of fear for me. I started going through and just would always try to have self-sabotaging thoughts in mind, all these different voices in my head. So first of all, let me take you back. Step one for clearing your blocks is going from unconscious to conscious, recognizing that you have something going on to begin with. So I did that when I finally recognized I had a block. Step two is listening to the voices in your head. Okay, so I was playing out all my worst case scenarios. Now when you're listening to the voices, don't go down the rabbit hole with them, okay? Listen to what they're saying so you can figure out what the story is behind it that you're telling yourself, so you can figure out where it started and exactly what it's saying so you can pinpoint it. Mine was saying, I hated the fight. I couldn't stand the fight around the money all the time. And I was operating in that place of fear. So step number 3 then is to ask yourself, is it true? So 2 ways you can go. It's either true or it's not. And if it's not true, if the things that you're saying to yourself in your head are not true, you need to go on to step 4 and figure out what's the evidence. Because we say stuff to ourselves all the time. I'm so stupid. I don't have enough confidence. I'll never be able to do that. But the reality is if you take a look at your experience, if you take a look at what you've done in the past, you can find lots of examples where that's not true. and where you've been successful, and you can take those and use them. Now, in my case, it was true. I had example after example after example. And the one that really stood out to me was when my ex took me into mediation to go to court over a difference of $2,000 in our annual income. And at that point in time, I was paying pretty much most of the bills because I was afraid to talk to him about it. And he also had rental income that he didn't think counted in this whole thing because he thought it was just based on wage coming in. So when we went into mediation, it was thrown out. So in essence, I kind of won that battle. But I walked out and I thought, I didn't like this. I really didn't like the feeling of the fight, and it didn't make me feel good. And when I walked out, I said, I only have to deal with this until my kids are 18. Subconscious rule, Andrea doesn't get to make money until the kids are 18. That was my block, very specific block. So I had to figure out how was I going to go around this, because all I could think about was the fight, because it was always, always a fight around it. And so I just couldn't figure it out, how I was going to get over it. And my coach was out of town, so I couldn't talk with her. So I ended up going for coffee with my husband. And so the first thing he says to me is, Andrea, if you have lots of money, you know you can get a good lawyer and win, right? It's like, okay, I get that, but it's actually not about that. It's about the fight. And so he, understanding me really well, got it. And so he sat there for a few minutes and he said, okay, what about this? What if, when you get your millions, you decide that you will buy him something crazily extravagant because you can? So that brings me to the next step that you have to take. You have to ask yourself, are you willing to do what's necessary to break that block? Okay, so for some people that might mean setting hard boundaries. For some people it might mean pushing somebody out of your life and not keeping them there anymore because they're holding you back. Or it might mean stepping outside your comfort zone and doing something that you're uncomfortable with so that you can bring those things into your life that you really wanted. Now when my husband said this to me, I went, awesome, I could do that. And the reason is, and I know that wouldn't work for everybody, but the reason is my life-defining value is love. That's what makes me tick. It doesn't for everybody, it makes me tick. And interestingly, the opposite end of the spectrum of love is fear. So I had been completely out of alignment with this for a very long time. So I had to figure out how was I going to get around this. And when he said that to me, the weight lifted, the knots in my stomach let go, and I felt lighter, and I thought, yes, this is it, I can do this, I'm okay with this. So the final step in the process is figuring out what you can do to create a better outcome. What's the first step that you're going to take to make this better for yourself? So the first step that I had to take was to figure out how I was going to stop my head from keeping going down the rabbit hole. I had to come up with a strategy to stay focused on the solution that we had just found. And I did. And I want to tell you that the most amazing thing happened right after that. I had had a lump sum of money that had been tied up for a long time, and I didn't know if I was ever going to get it back. 5 days after I cleared that block, that money ended up in my bank account. A week and a half after that, I had landed 3 new contracts. And then a few days after that, unbeknownst to me, the government did a reassessment on my taxes, and I ended up with another lump sum in my bank account. Law of attraction working, hallelujah, right? Okay, so you get through that block and it starts working for you. So my question to you is, what could you be doing right now if you got past the BS and you broke through the self-sabotage? So my wish for you is to take these steps, put them to use, and start living a life that you really want. Thank you.